Well, the mainstream media is finally starting to cover Tara Reade's sexual assault allegation against Joe Biden. For those of you who don't know, Tara Reade used to work for Joe Biden in his Senate office when he was a senator in the 1990s. Also, for those of you who don't know, Joe Biden is the presumptive nominee for the Democratic Party in the 2020 presidential election race in the United States. For months, actually, the sexual assault allegation went completely uncovered by the mainstream media during the primary. It came about when Bernie Sanders was still in the race, but they did not touch it whatsoever until Bernie Sanders dropped out. Gee, I wonder why that is. Now, the first mainstream media outlet to cover it was Yahoo News, who then moved it to the sports section before subsequently deleting the story. But since Bernie Sanders has dropped out of the race, they finally started covering it, yet Joe Biden still did not have to answer for it. His campaign put out a statement stating that it never happened, but Joe was actually never pressed on it on national TV, even after it had started to be covered by the mainstream media. But finally, he is being forced to address the question. He was on Morning Joe, I think May 1st, which is a show on MSNBC. Now let's see what he said.
Okay, let's bring in the apparent Democratic nominee for president, former Vice President Joe Biden. Mr. Vice President, thank you for coming on the show this morning. We have a lot we want to ask you this morning. Okay. Joe and Willie will join in just a moment for questions on how you would handle this pandemic, the campaign, and other news of the day. But at the start, it's just going to be you and me, and I want to get right to the allegation made against you by Tara Reade. So the former Senate aide accuses you of sexual assault. And please, to our viewers, please excuse the graphic nature of this, but I want to make sure that there is no question as to what we're talking about. She says in 1993, Mr. Vice President, that you pinned her against the wall and reached under her clothing and penetrated her with your fingers. Would you please go on the record with the American people? Did you sexually assault Tara Reade?
No, it is not true. I'm saying unequivocally, it never happened. And it didn't. It never happened.
Now, before we get into the rest of this, I think it's important to point out that there's actually very little reason to believe Joe Biden. Why is this? Well, first and foremost, he's actually been proven to be a liar. Now, a lot of people don't know that he actually ran for president twice, I believe, before this time, and he had to drop out for plagiarism and lying. Let's check that out.
But this standard is not a measure of how we can evaluate the condition of our society. It cannot measure the health of our children, the quality of our education, the joy of their play.
Yet the gross national product does not allow for the health of our children, the quality of their education, or the joy of their play.
Let us pledge that our generation of Americans will pay any price, bear any burden, accept any challenge, and meet any hardship to secure the blessings of prosperity and the promise of opportunity for our children.
We shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe to assure the survival and the success of liberty.
And I started thinking,
I just want to touch on for a minute how amazing that is. Not only did he just plagiarize someone, and here we're going to see he plagiarized a politician in another country. First, he plagiarized the brother of one of the most popular presidents in recent memory at that point, who had made a statement about a year prior. I'm not sure how he thought he could get away with it. And he also plagiarized that very popular president himself. To think that you could get away with something like that is just, like, ballsy, I guess, but also incredibly stupid. Anyway, let's watch more.
As I was coming over here, why is it that Joe Biden is the first in his family ever to go to a university?
Why am I the first Kinnick in 1,000 generations to be able to get to university?
Why is it that my wife, who's sitting out there in the audience, is the first in her family to ever go to college?
Why is Glenys the first woman in her family in 1,000 generations to be able to get to university?
No, it's not because they weren't as smart. It's not because they didn't work as hard.
It's because they didn't have a platform upon which to stand.
Does anybody really think that they didn't get what we had because they didn't have the talent or the strength or the endurance or the commitment? Of course not. It was because there was no platform upon which they could stand.
He also got caught lying about his academic record.
What law school did you attend, and where did you place in that class? And the other question is, could you quickly, I think
I probably have a much higher IQ than you do, I suspect. I went to law school on a full academic scholarship, the only one in my class to have a full academic scholarship. In the first year in law school, I decided I didn't want to be in law school and ended up in the bottom two-thirds of my class, and then decided I wanted to stay, went back to law school, and in fact ended up in the top half of my class. I won the International Moot Court competition. I was the outstanding student in the political science department at the end of my year. I graduated with 3 degrees from undergraduate school and 165 credits, only need 123 credits, and I'd be delighted to sit down and compare my IQ to yours if you'd like, Frank.
He did not get that scholarship. He also lied about being at the top of his class in law school, graduating at the top of his class, which was also not true. As he says here, I did not graduate in the top half of my class at law school, and my recollection of this was inaccurate. Apparently, he graduated near the bottom of his class. But the lying did not stop in the 1980s. Oh, no, no, no. We also saw this during this presidential campaign. In the last Democratic debate with Bernie Sanders, he also lied flat out about his record on an issue that was much more easily verifiable. Let's check that out.
Let me ask you a question, Joe.
Yeah.
You're right here with me.
Yeah.
Have you been on the floor of the Senate? You were in the Senate for a few years.
Yeah.
Time and time again, talking about the necessity, with pride, about cutting Social Security, cutting Medicare, cutting veterans programs.
No.
You never said that.
No. When I argued that we should freeze federal spending, I meant Social Security as well. I meant Medicare and Medicaid. I meant veterans benefits. I meant every single solitary thing in the government.
Look, here's the deal.
You're an honest guy. Why don't you just tell the truth here? We all make mistakes.
I am telling the truth.
And I not only tried it once, I tried it twice, I tried it a third time, and I tried it a fourth time.
Joe, let me repeat it again. I want you just to be straight with the American people. I am saying that you have been on the floor of the Senate time and time again talking about the need to cut Social Security, Medicare, and veterans programs. Is that true, or is that not true?
No, it's not true.
That is not true?
That is not true.
I meant veterans benefits. I meant every single solitary thing in the government.
Everything was on the table. I did not support any of those cuts in Social Security or in veterans benefits.
Whoa. Everything was on the table. All right, you're right. You just said it, including, in your judgment, cuts to Social Security and veterans.
In order to get the kinds of changes we need on other things related.
Joe, then
but we did not cut it.
I know, because people like me helped stop that. All that I would say to the American people, go to YouTube. It's all over the place. Joe said it many, many times, and I'm surprised, you can defend that or change your mind on it, but you can't deny the reality.
So it's really important to point out that Bernie Sanders wasn't even trying to trip him up in a lie. He wasn't expecting him to lie about it because, as Bernie Sanders points out, videos of Joe Biden on the floor of the Senate arguing for this stuff are all over YouTube. Now, they only used the audio in his political ad, but the actual video is there. So he was just trying to, as he said multiple times, he was just trying to move him on that. He was just trying to get him to publicly apologize for it. If anything, he was helping Joe Biden, because that's an attack that would definitely be brought up by Donald Trump and the Republicans in the general election. And at this point, Bernie kind of seemed to know that he was going to have to drop out. But all this considered, why should we believe anything that he says? Just because he denies something doesn't mean it didn't happen. But the interview is not over, so let's watch the rest of that.
Do you remember her? Do you remember any types of complaints that she might have made?
I don't remember any type of complaint she may have made. It was 27 years ago, and I don't remember, nor does anyone else that I'm aware of. And the fact is that I don't remember.
That's one thing we may be able to believe him about.
Have you, or your campaign, have you reached out to her?
No.
Of course they haven't. They've been pretending that she doesn't exist.
It was 27 years ago. This never happened. And when she first made the claim, we made it clear that it never happened. And that's as simple as that.
In the past 30 minutes or so, you released a statement on Medium, and among other things, you write this: there's only one place a complaint of this kind could be, the National Archives. I am requesting that the Secretary of State the Senate ask the archives to identify any record of the complaint she alleges she filed. If there was any such complaint, the record will be there. Are you preparing us for a complaint that might be revealed in some way? Are you confident there is nothing?
I'm confident there's nothing. No one ever brought it to the attention of me 27 years ago. This is any assertion at all. No one that I'm aware of in my campaign at, my Senate office at the time is aware of any such request and or any such complaint. And so I'm not worried about it at all. If there is a complaint, that's where it would be. That's where it would be filed. And if it's there, put it out, but I've never seen it. No one has that I'm aware of.
The New York Times has investigated this exhaustively. They didn't find any of your former staff members were able to corroborate the details of this allegation. She did file a police report a few weeks ago with the D.C. police. But since you want to set the record straight.
By the way, that is very important, the fact that Tara Reade filed that police report, because it's illegal to file a false police report. So she was just trying to prove that she's absolutely not lying.
Why limit this only to Tara Reade? Why not release any complaints that had been made against you during your Senate career?
I'm prepared to do that. The best of my knowledge, there's been no complaints made against me in terms of my Senate career, in terms of my office and anything that's been run. Look, this is an open book. There's nothing for me to hide.
Now that term open book will become very important in just a minute.
Nothing at all.
You were unequivocal, Mr. Vice President, back in 2018 during the Kavanaugh controversy and hearings. And you said that women should be believed. You said this: for a woman to come forward in the glaring lights of focus nationally, you've got to start off with the presumption that at least the essence of what she is talking about is real. Whether or not she forgets the facts, whether or not it's been made worse or better over time. She's going to be going on national television on Sunday. Tara Reade is coming forward in the glaring lights. To use your words, should we not start off with the presumption that the essence of what she's talking about is real? She says you sexually assaulted her.
Look, from the very beginning, I've said believing women means taking the woman's claims seriously. When she steps forward and then vet it, look into it. That's true in this case as well. Women have a right to be heard, and the press should rigorously investigate claims they make. I'll always uphold that principle. But in the end, in every case, the truth is what matters. And in this case, the truth is the claims are false.
Is it possible these claims are held in an NDA? Do you have any NDAs that have been signed by women who were employed by you?
There's no NDA signed, and no one's ever signed. I've never asked anybody to sign an NDA. There are no NDAs, period, in my case. None.
Your Senate documents at the University of Delaware were supposed to go public, and then they were resealed. The access was changed.
Some open book he got there.
I know that you're saying any HR complaints could be in the National Archives, but why not reveal your Senate documents that are being held in Delaware? I know there's 1,800 plus boxes, but if she believes and she alleges that the complaints may be hidden there, why not strive for complete transparency? Why was the access to those documents sealed up when they were supposed to be revealed?
Pay close attention to his answer on this, because, ooh boy, if we had body language experts.
Well, they weren't supposed to be revealed. I gave them the university. The university said it's going to take them time to go through all the boxes. They said it wouldn't be, and that wouldn't be before 2020 that occurred, or 2021. I can't remember the year they said. But look, a record like this can only be one place. It would be it would not be at the University of Delaware. My archives do not contain personal files. My archives contain document, and when I say personal, personnel files. They don't contain any personnel files.
Is he reading a script right now? Is he really reading a script? I mean, god damn.
There are public records, my speeches, my papers, my position papers. And if that document existed, it would be stored in the National Archives, where documents from the office she claims to have filed her complaint with are stored. That's where they are stored. The Senate controls those archives. So I'm asking the Secretary of the Senate today to identify whether any such document exists. If it does, make it public.
Right, but there are claims and concerns and reports in Business Insider, and she claims that possibly a complaint or some sort of record of this might be at the University of Delaware. So, for complete transparency, why not push for the release of any documents with Tara Reade's name on them, whether it's at the University of Delaware or the National Archives?
First of all, let's get this straight. There are no personnel documents. You can't do that. You wouldn't, for example, if you worked with me or I worked for you and you had my income tax returns, you had my whatever. They're private documents. They're not for they don't get put out in the public. So they're not part of the public record that, in fact, is that any senator or vice president or president has in their documents. Look, there was one place that she could file the complaint, and that office at the time was all those records from that office are in the archives, and they're controlled by the Senate. That's where personnel documents would be if they exist. That's where the complaint would be if it exists.
Given the fact that you have said in the past that if a woman goes under the lights and talks about something like this, we have to consider that the essence of this is real. Is the essence of what she is saying is real? Why do you think she's doing this?
I'm not going to question her motive. I'm not going to get into that at all. I don't know why she's saying this. I don't know why after 27 years, all of a sudden this gets raised. I don't understand it.
Notice how he didn't say something similar about Christine Blasey Ford when she came out with her allegation against Brett Kavanaugh. Now, it's all we're going to watch of this because it's a very long interview and there's no point. There's a lot more to get to. There is a lot of corroborating evidence that actually Mika from Morning Joe did not bring up. For one, Tara Reade's mother apparently called into an episode of Larry King Live in 1993, only a few weeks after Tara left Biden's Senate office, with a similar story and calling from a region where Tara Reade's mother actually lived at the time. Tara Reade also says that she swears up and down that is her mother's voice. Let's watch.
We're back. A couple more phone calls on this very important topic. Our guests are former United States Senator Howard Baker, Richard Allen, former National Security Advisor, and Lois Romano of the Washington Post. San Luis Obispo, California. Hello.
Yes, hello. I'm wondering what a staffer would do besides go to the press in Washington. My daughter has just left there after working for a prominent senator and could not get through with her problems at all. And the only thing she could have done was go to the press, and she chose not to do it out of respect for him.
Or she had a story to tell, but out of respect for the person she worked for, she didn't tell it.
That's true.
Now, it is also worth pointing out that this episode of Larry King Live has been scrubbed from Google Play. But wait, there's more. Apparently, a neighbor of Tara Reade at the time says that Tara spoke to her about it in about 1995 or 1996, which is further corroboration of her story. Let's watch her interview with Amy Goodman on Democracy Now!
Linda Lacasse came forward just recently in the Business Insider piece and has corroborated Tara Reade's account. Linda, this is your first time speaking on television about this.
So I just want to point out that Mika did raise that Business Insider piece, but she didn't mention any of the details from it.
Can you tell us what happened in the mid-1990s? How did you know Tara? And then tell us what she told you and why you're coming forward today.
Well, Tara was my next-door neighbor. I moved into the apartment right next to her, and we became close at that time. And she told me about it when we were having a conversation. And so, you know, as Rich put forth in the article in the Business Insider, she, you know, I was having a moment outside. I was outside, and I had just received some papers, and I was upset about them. And she came over, and we were talking about violence, because I had experienced violence myself. And she started telling me about Joe Biden and what he had done. And basically, she told me that he put her up against a wall, and he put his hand up her skirt, and he put his fingers inside her. And she was very distraught, and she was very upset, and she was crying. And that's how that conversation happened.
So this is even further corroboration of the story. Now, obviously, it doesn't, you know, prove anything or anything of a critical nature, but it does continue to point in the right direction or wrong direction for Joe Biden, and that is something that really should not be overlooked. As Mika mentioned, the University of Delaware has no plans to release Biden's Senate papers, and if he actually had nothing to hide, then he would want all of these papers to be released, because it's not that literally everything would be made public, but everything would be brushed over, and then anything pertaining to this allegation would be released. So if there were nothing in it, he wouldn't really care. And what makes that even more interesting is the fact that Biden operatives, people working on Biden's campaign, actually accessed these Senate records at the University of Delaware before mid-March. So they may actually know that an incriminating document is in there, and they may be actively trying to suppress it. Now, despite all the corroborating evidence and the severity of the accusation made against Joe Biden, high-ranking Democratic officials, many vying to be the VP pick of Joe Biden, are endorsing him anyway. One of them includes Hillary Clinton. I'm not sure if Hillary Clinton is actually vying to be VP, but at this point, I would not be surprised one little bit. Now, despite this, this is what she said about Christine Blasey Ford when she came out with her allegations against Judge Kavanaugh.
This as a lawyer, do you feel 100% certain that the events that she described are true and are therefore disqualifying?
Look, I watched as much of her testimony as I could. I found her very credible. You have to ask yourself, why would anybody put themselves through this if they did not believe that they had important information?
Good question.
To the Senate. She basically said that. She thought it was her civic duty. So I found her presentation, I found her willingness to say, I don't remember that, but I remember this, to be very convincing. And I felt a great swell of, pride that she would be willing to put herself out there under these circumstances.
Now, for the record, I agree with Hillary Clinton here. I did believe Christine Blasey Ford when she came out for these reasons, but why would they not apply these same standards to Tara Reade? Another high-ranking Democratic operative who is actually vying for a VP slot for Joe Biden has also come out in favor of Joe. Let's watch her interview with Don Lemon on CNN.
Someone who wants to be his vice president, I think it's important that we speak about something that's in the news now. As you know, there is a sexual assault allegation against Joe Biden. The accuser, her name is Tara Reade, tells CNN that the alleged incident happened in 1993 while she was working as an aide in Biden's Senate office. She is claiming that she was delivering Biden a duffel bag and says that Biden had her up against the wall in a corridor on the Hill and violated her with his fingers. Now, CNN has now spoken on the record with her former neighbor, who says Reade told her about the allegation within a few years of the alleged incident. Biden's campaign says untrue, never happened. Is this a credible allegation?
I believe that women deserve to be heard, and I believe that they need to be listened to. But I also believe that those allegations have to be investigated by credible sources. The New York Times did a deep investigation, and they found that the accusation was not credible.
That is actually not true. And it is very important that we point out that that is not true, because the New York Times has actually come out pissed off with Joe Biden and told them to stop saying that about their reporting, because what they did not find was a conclusion. They did not make a conclusion. They pointed out what they believed to be some flaws in her accusation, tried to poke holes in her story, that sort of thing, but they did not come out and conclusively say that they found no evidence of it.
I believe Joe Biden. I believe that he is a person who has demonstrated that his love
#believe women unless it's inconvenient for me.
Of family, his love of, he is a person who has demonstrated that his love of family.
She almost said love of women and then realized maybe I shouldn't say that.
His love of our community has been made perfectly clear through his work as a congressional leader and as an American leader. I know Joe Biden, and I think that he is telling the truth and that this did not happen.
So in 2018, you tweeted it was shameful that Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court nomination was being rushed forward, and survivors of violence like Christine Blasey Ford deserve to have their voices heard. Are you applying a different standard now?
Not at all. I believe then and I believe now that women deserve to be heard, because too often they are not. And Tara Reade deserved to have her story listened to and investigated. What was happening to Christine Blasey Ford was that there was no investigation. There was a rush to move the conversation forward so that no investigation was conducted. And as I said, I believe that those allegations needed to be investigated. And I believe that the New York Times and subsequent reports support what the Biden campaign has said. And I believe Joe Biden.
So you said you've heard her, you've heard enough, you don't believe her, you believe Joe Biden.
No, what I'm saying is.
Now, she doesn't like that framing because it's not a particularly flattering framing, and it actually kind of points out her hypocrisy a little bit.
Is that the New York Times investigation of her allegations, the New York Times investigation does not support the accusations against the vice president.
Not true.
I believe the Biden I know, and I think that he will make women proud, that he will make America proud.
The amount of hypocrisy between the way they covered and responded to the Kavanaugh allegation, which again, I will say I also believe, but the hypocrisy when you compare it, that to this is mind-boggling. But wait, there's more. This is what I was saying. The New York Times refutes Biden's campaign's reported talking points on Tara Reade allegation. As BuzzFeed reported on Tuesday, the centerpiece of those talking points is the assertion that a New York Times review led to the truth that the incident did not happen. But on Wednesday, in a statement to HuffPost, a spokesperson for the New York Times pushed back on this claim, denying that the report made a conclusion either way about the truth of Tara Reade's accusation. Well. Kirsten Gillibrand, another high-ranking Democratic official, maybe vying for Joe Biden's VP pick, but, you know, I think not very openly. Stacey Abrams and, like, Elizabeth Warren have, you know, been very vocal about the fact that they would be happy being a VP pick. I'm not entirely sure if Kirsten Gillibrand has, but yeah. Democratic Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York has offered her support to presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden following accusations of alleged sexual assault by his former Senate aide, Tara Reade. In a call with reporters on Tuesday, Gillibrand said that she supports and stands by Joe Biden. So when we believe women, this is Kirsten Gillibrand, it's for this explicit intention of making sure that there's space for all women to come forward to speak their truth and to be heard. And in this allegation, that is what Tara Reade has done. And that's enough for Kirsten Gillibrand. She has come forward, she has spoken, and they have done an investigation in several outlets. Those investigations, Vice President Biden has called for himself. Vice President Biden has vehemently denied these allegations, and I support Vice President Biden. Well. Well, the hypocrisy. Now, it's important to remember also that Kirsten Gillibrand led the charge against former Democratic Senator Al Franken to have him resign. He had a number of sexual harassment. I don't think there was any sexual assault. I could be wrong on that. I can't actually remember. And she led the charge to have him resign. Now let's watch Kirsten Gillibrand comment on the Brett Kavanaugh accusation by Christine Blasey Ford.
I believe Dr. Blasey Ford because she's telling the truth. And you know it by her story. You know it by the fact that she told her therapist 5 years ago. It was documented at the time. We have the therapist's notes. She told her husband, this is a trauma she's been dealing with her whole life. She doesn't want to be in a bedroom that doesn't have 2 doors. People knew that about her a long time ago. She told a friend a year ago. She told a reporter before Dr. Kavanaugh was ever named. These are the hallmarks of truth. These are the hallmarks of someone who wants to be believed because she fears that if this person is confirmed, he will do terrible things for American women.
Now, the same standards are not applied to Tara Reade. It's disappointing to say the least, but I suppose not that surprising. Now, when it finally was covered on TV, Chris Hayes actually had the balls to say something about it on MSNBC. And then on Twitter, Fire Chris Hayes trended as a hashtag. Let's see what he said about it.
There have been moments, I think for many of us, all of us, when we have heard about accusations against someone that we find ourselves desperately wanting not to believe. Whether that is because we have some personal admiration for the individual or their work, or political admiration, someone on our quote-unquote side. But part of the difficult lesson of the Me Too era is not that every accusation is true and everything should be believed on its face, but that you do have to fight yourself when you feel that impulse. You have to do that in order to take seriously what is being alleged and what the evidence is and to evaluate it. And that is the case with the accusation by a woman named Tara Reade against Joe Biden. Reade briefly worked as a Senate aide in Biden's office in the early 90s. Last year, she told a California newspaper that in 1993, Joe Biden, quote, touched her several times, making her feel uncomfortable. Now, at that time, Reade was one of several women who came forward around that moment with accusations against the former vice president of inappropriate sort of over-physicalness, touching, kissing, or hugging that they say made them feel uncomfortable. Then last month, she made a much more serious allegation, telling first a podcast and later the New York Times that in 1993, Joe Biden pinned her to a wall in the Senate building, reached under her clothing, and penetrated her with his fingers. A spokeswoman for Joe Biden says the allegation is false, and they have strongly denied it. This week, there was also a new development in the story, and that is that Tara Reade's former neighbor at the time went on the record with her name, telling Business Insider that in 1995 or 1996, a few years after this, that Reade told her she had been assaulted by Biden.
I mean, it's insane that just a completely rational and nuanced take by Chris Hayes would lead to so many goddamn normie Democrat Biden bros siding with Biden, riding with Biden until they die with Biden. They just want him fired. They want him to shut the fuck up. I mean, it's insane. Now, I'm not saying Trump is better, and I'm not saying you should vote for Trump, ever. But the fact that nobody is pissed off enough to at least say, okay, maybe we should try and not give him the nomination. Let's try and vote for somebody else. Let's try and have a backup plan. No, it's shut the fuck up. Shut up. Shut up. You're going to ruin this. Now, here's a really good piece in The Guardian about it. Democrats downplaying the Biden allegations will damage #MeToo. And that is absolutely true. This is written by Arwa Mahdawi. I'm very sorry for butchering that, and I absolutely did. Mahdawi? I'm really bad at that. Me Too is dead, and Joe Biden killed it. On Friday, Joe Biden made his first public comment on the allegations that he sexually assaulted a former Senate staffer, Tara Reade, in 1993. After weeks of silence, the presumptive Democratic nominee categorically denied the accusations in a Medium post and in an interview with MSNBC's Morning Joe. But of course, it isn't as simple as that. While it's commendable that Biden finally addressed Reade's allegations directly, is it commendable? It was more something that I thought should have happened a long time before. Instead of having his campaign issue more denials, he needs to go further. Biden must authorize a search of his Senate papers, which are held at the University of Delaware, to identify any evidence of the complaint that Reade says she made about him at the time. I mean, like, I just don't understand I mean, I do understand, but it's mind-boggling to see the amount of partisan shillery on behalf of Joe Biden. I mean, standards be damned. Me Too be damned. Fuck it. Now, this is going to be an interesting story to see how it develops. I mean, there are a few possibilities that could happen. They could very well just tell him to fuck off, because now it's far too damaging. And you would think in a fair world that it would just go, that the nomination would go to the runner-up, or at least they would finish the primary, and then the person with the most delegates, the runner-up, would have that, would be nominated. But as we already know, they were more than willing to steal the nomination from Bernie when they thought that he was going to win, if he had less than a majority of delegates. So they've already pledged that if Bernie does not have the majority of delegates, he will not get the nomination. So at this point, Hillary Clinton is much more likely to get the nomination, or Kamala Harris, than Bernie Sanders is. So this is a very interesting story. We're going to see how this develops over the next coming weeks.